This is the story of Judy Schiff. I've been able to live most of my life in this peaceful, beautiful area of Boroondara because of one man who took a great risk. The declaration of VP, Victory Pacific Day, on the 15th of August 1945, affected the lives of most people around the world, as it meant an end of all official hostilities that had been World War II. For me, it turned out to be a momentous, memorable day for more reasons than the declaration of peace. I had been attending Campbell State School number 888 since I started school in 1942, and in many ways I was just like any of the other kids. We all learned how to knit, we all loved the Six Ways lolly shop, and we all knew many of the local shopkeepers, a favourite being Mr. Dunbar, who ran a commercial library with a children's section where we could borrow books for 3 pennies each. My father was one of these shopkeepers. Together with my mother, he operated Herman's Linens, a tablecloth and haberdashery store which grew from humble beginnings. My mother made embroidered tablecloths which my father would sell door to door from an old suitcase. Eventually, they raised enough money to afford to rent a shop, and the 3 of us lived in rooms behind it. Yet there was a key difference between me and the other children. My parents and I had escaped from Nazi Germany when I was just a baby, and we were now living safely in Australia because of an act of kindness. My parents decided to leave Berlin in 1938. They left by train, the first leg of a very long journey, mainly by various ships, arriving in Melbourne in 1939. A Gestapo officer entered their carriage and announced that he had orders to remove all Jews from the train. To my parents, he said, "Because your baby is sleeping, you can cross the frontier." The officer's action amounted to an act of heroism. He undoubtedly risked his life by disobeying orders to save ours. But because of this, every Saturday morning when other children were perhaps taking part in typical Australian weekend pastimes of playing football or cricket or going on picnics, I was reporting to the local police station with my family to show our passports and prove that we were still in the area. Friendly enemy aliens was the official term given to us on our Saturday morning check-ins. Herman the German was the term used by my classmates in the playground during the week. But at around 11 a.m. on the 15th of August 1945, the difference between me and my classmates began to fade. It was announced that peace had been declared and we could all go home for the day. Church bells began to peal as I walked home along Camberwell Road. I crossed the junction, passing Six Ways lolly shop without entering, and up Burke Road, past the familiar shops, where I knew nearly all the shopkeepers, and on to number 817, my parents' shop. On that morning, my father closed the business. When I returned early from school, he set up a board game on the kitchen table, and we played happily, enjoying the unexpected holiday. The telephone rang. It was the hospital to inform us that my mother had given birth to a baby, a boy, my brother. My parents had always said that they wanted another child when there was peace. Their timing was impeccable. My husband and I met in our teens and we were married in our early 20s. I had a recurring dream that it would be lovely to have twins, preferably a boy and a girl. There are no twins in either of our families, so it was just a dream. To our surprise and amazement, I was told, following an X-ray, that my husband and I were expecting twins. They are now parents themselves. My dream had come true. 5 years later, another daughter was born, and as the years rolled by, we were blessed with 5 grandchildren. Wishing had made it so. Wishing, and of course, the heroic act of one man.
This is the story of Janet Woolhouse.
My name is Janet Fullhouse, and this is my story. I was one of 6 children who grew up in the country, being born in Tasmania. We came across to Victoria by boat when I was very young in 1939 to live in the Mallee. While we had always been on rations during the war, in the country it had been a little easier. My mother always made do. We got by on ration food and clothing coupons. And my younger sisters had a lot of hand-me-downs from cousins. That was quite common back then. Though if you got to be over 5 feet, then you got extra clothing rations. I never quite made it. My sister did, and I got her clothes handed down to me. It was a hard time, but everyone shared. My mother would give away ration coupons to others for tea, butter or clothes when they needed them. My father was a Methodist minister and used to help with the evacuation of people who lived around Port Phillip Bay, as there was such a fear that they would be bombed. Being such a tight-knit community, perhaps because of my father's position, we're always told, make sure you're nice to this person today because their father is a POW and has gone missing. Or, this person's father has been killed, so be extra nice to them. And I'll never forget the Olympic Games in Melbourne in 1956. I was a YWCA member and joined to do the gymnastic classes. And one day they approached us and said they would be ordering a batch of tickets for the opening ceremony of the Games. My sister and I decided to take 2 tickets. We ended up right in the section where the athletes came into the arena. I was part country girl, part city, so these things very much excited me. And as the athletes went by, one of the Russians gave me a red handkerchief with Hammer and Sickle emblem on it. Back then you never were quite sure if the Russians were your friends or your enemies, but I still treasure that handkerchief to this day. My memory of this event is that no one checked your bags. There was no tension or security. People were friendly, and people would give away tickets to others if they left early or wanted to go to events in other arenas. My sister and I also sold blow-up cushions outside the MCG for the Tally-Ho Boys Village. We would call out, "The seats are hard, buy your cushions here," and we did rather well. My brother reminded me you could go to the Olympic Village at Heidelberg and wander around and meet the athletes. Of course they were also on the city streets and it was fun to talk to them. I wasn't working by then, but other family members were either teaching or students, so went after school to more events than I did. It was all so wonderful. My sister lives next door and we share a common wall between our living rooms but have different entrances. I have arthritis and can't bend too well, and the other day I sat in the driveway after trying to get some tiles from under the house, and a lady went by and said, "Are you okay?" Even though we're across the road from the park and there's a train station right near us, instead of being worried that people will bother you, people help you. I love living here.
This is the story of Mavis Risk.
I'm Mavis Risk, and this is my story. This house is not where you might think you'd end up. It's a council flat, and it's very small, but I'm surrounded by poetry and all my favourite books and authors, and that's enough for me. I've got just about everything on my shelf. I love Shakespeare best. I think Shakespeare was the top of the poets. My senior English mid teacher gave me my love of English literature, especially Shakespeare. And wonderful experiences in my early education gave me my love of school and learning. I was crowned May Queen in primary school, which was a lovely surprise, as you get voted into the role by your classmates. I got to wear a long dress and crown and a blue and gold train, and I remember vividly watching my classmates dance around the maypole. After school, I continued to have wonderful adventures. I had a relationship with John Constable Reeve, an artist and descendant of John Constable. I loved to watch him paint. Eventually I married an administrator of a hospital. This meant moving all over the world, wherever work was, and being expected to do so at the drop of a hat. I was never asked, just told, "We're moving here in a week." I'd pack up the house and get the children ready. 4 of them. Our needs were rarely taken into account. I've lived all over the world in 6 different countries. There was one occasion where we were in South Africa and the people we were staying with looked up at this mountain called the Kloof and said, "We're going to climb that tomorrow." I had 4 young children. None of us had appropriate footwear or proper climbing gear. And as I watched the children jumping from rock to rock, I thought, "Oh God, one of them's going to die." Then we went across the top of the mountain, and in the middle of the top there was a big gully. We had to go down, and as we went down, we were told to go in 2s. And as my partner went down, suddenly somebody at the top shouted out, "Look out!" And this enormous boulder was crashing down from side to side of the gully that we were going down. I mean, you just didn't know where it was going to end up. It finally came to rest just above where we were. So we got down into the gully and my legs were shaking. But then we had to go along the gully and then up the other side. And the chap who was in charge of us insisted on taking us out onto a ledge to see where he'd been before with another chap, and this chap had fallen over and died. I was living in New Zealand when I had enough. I announced that I was leaving my husband and going to Australia. I had the full support of my children, except one who's never quite forgiven me. I remember my brother had once said to me, "Mavis, you used to be so strong, but when you got married you became a mouse." When I divorced, I became myself again. My husband's job was to micromanage things, and he couldn't help but micromanage me. This house is not where you think you might end up, but I love where I live. I feel like I know the rhythm of the neighbourhood. I go for walks on the path most mornings and say hi to the same people. I can now act and do what I want to do.
This is the story of Fran Casa.
I'm Fran Casa, and this is my story. I suppose if I was looking for something to give my heart to in Boroondara, it would be you white ghost gums and you haze paddock. A girl from the council came and talked to me today. She asked a lot of questions. She was keen to hear about my growing up in Queensland. She's from the southeast, Toowoomba. I was from up north, the Atherton Tablelands. She lives in Belgrave now, said she misses the trees and the mountains of home and was thrilled to move up there. She asked me if I missed up north. Well, I said, I'm torn between having my ashes scattered in my spiritual home on the Tablelands or here. She suggested I should do both. Is it greedy to straddle oneself across 3 states? She pressed on about the ghost gums. Did I have a connection to them because I'd grown up in far north Queensland? They're different trees up there, I said. Rainforest trees. The ghost gums are river trees. But yes, there's a connection. For me, the ghost gums confirmed my identity. Growing up in Queensland shaped my Indigenous interests. I went to school with Aboriginal kids. Our family lived on a poverty-stricken dairy farm. We lived in a house. The Aborigines lived in their humpies, but I was always so jealous of them because we used to have to do needlepoint at school, and mine, somehow, always ended up so crumpled and dirty, and they were so artistic, so good with their hands. Theirs would always be so white and perfect. I envied them so much. Years somehow went by and I started to think about those children, what became of them. I went back to the area many times and asked people what they knew. No one seemed to remember anything, but I knew they had to be somewhere, that someone would know something. People don't just vanish into thin air. And then, about 10 years ago, I tracked down someone who knew what had happened. All these years I've been searching for them. They'd been searching for people off a particular dairy farm, people who'd moved them off their land. I could never understand why I'd always felt such a strange connection to those children. When they found out it was my grandfather's farm, they just said, "Fancy you remembering us after all these years."
The story of Philomena Pinto.
Hi, I'm Philomena Pinto. If I could pass down one story to my grandchildren, it is that Boroondara is the best place to be. I grew up in India in a family of 5 brothers, a sister and my parents. We were poor, but there was a lot of love. Actually, we were well-to-do, but some greedy relatives took it all, but they are not happy. We came here to build a future for our 3 children. We dreamt that our children would have a good life, and my own dream was that we would own our own home, and this dream came true. We left India in 1970 on the 26th of January, Australia Day, and it was a moment that changed my life for the better. I'd been praying to Mary, help of Christians, before we left, praying that we would be okay, praying that we would find a good place to live. Well, we arrived and needed to find a place to live. We turned to some nuns for help, and when I told them I'd been praying to Mary, help of Christians, that we would be taken care of, the nuns burst out laughing. It turned out they were the exact order I had been praying to. Our Lady has helped me a lot. She's always looking over me. I have a picture on my fridge. There are many things that have happened in my life that I cannot explain. Miracles I know Our Lady was responsible for. My daughter Alison, 4 years old, was tucked up safely in bed. It was raining and raining, and I had this premonition. I sat right up in bed in the middle of the night and said to my husband, "Go get the kids." It was like something forced us to go and get them out of their bed. We raced to the children's bedroom and we grabbed Alison, and a moment later the ceiling totally collapsed right on her bed. Well, I say a prayer to Our Lady every night before bed, and I know she saved my daughter. It was a miracle. I still send money to Our Lady of Don Bosco for this blessing. I've been blessed with 3 wonderful children. Alison calls me every morning from work to say hello. One of my sons lives in the bungalow out at the back, and my other son, he's very funny. When he calls me, he says, "Mother," and my other baby is Jerry the dog, a Shih Tzu cross. We've had such a wonderful life together. I love the peace and quiet, but I miss one of my neighbors, Anna. She was like my sister. If a fig was ripe on her tree, she would give it to me. Of course, it is not her fruit I miss, it's the company. She had her own chair and a teacup. I still have it here for her. Would you like to stay for coffee?
And this is our last story, Jamie.
I was there for 23 and a half years. It was advertised in the jobs pages. I took a gamble and applied. Then started as an assistant hallkeeper at the Hawthorn Town Hall in 1989. There were a lot of applicants for the job, but I'm from Chile and the Otan clerk was from South America. I have friends from Chile. We thought we were good people, so I got an advantage over the other applicants. This is what I heard anyway. Now I'm a parking inspector, and no one is happy to see me, but back then, always liked a lot. We started the mornings cleaning the offices from 7 a.m. to 9:30 a.m. just before people would arrive. And then we would move into the main hall, and most days of the week we had something on. January was quiet because all the schools were on holiday, but our busiest month was September. Holiday time meant all the schools had their concerts, and of course there were all the spring dinners. We have a dance on a Saturday night, so normally clean that up on Monday. There were big cleanups, but fortunately there was no alcohol involved, no food involved, so it was fairly clean. There were no fights or anything like that. But back then security had the best job. You see the security guards dancing, not breaking up fights. People were so happy back then. The most challenging job security ever had to do was try to keep people off the artwork, which was hanging all over the walls. Actually, there was one incident I remember. The police station behind the town hall used to book us for the Christmas parties. We had a dumbwaiter between the hall and the kitchen upstairs. My boss, Alec, caught one of the female police officers going up and down in the dumbwaiter. They were good parties. But you couldn't get away with anything like that at the dances. On Wednesday and Thursdays we had Ronnie Richards. He was very old back then. He was the kind of person who, let's just say he was very old school. Men wore long sleeves, ties and jackets. He wouldn't let people in short shirts. And he had his own security just to make sure people in short shirts couldn't get in. John Anderson was another dance promoter and was there about 40 years. He just did Hawthorn Town Hall dances, was an accountant by day, but badly needed a pastime, so luckily he didn't mind people coming in short sleeve shirts. The dances were really good because we would have between 400 to 600 people in the hall. Gradually the numbers started to drop off, but when I started it was like 400 to 600, and there were dances on Wednesdays, one on Thursday, one on Friday, and one on Saturday. The dress code was Dress to Impress. And the band that everyone loved the most was the True Tones. They would only play like twice a month, but they were by far the most popular. It was a good job. In November, I'm going back to Chile for the first time since 1974. I was 13 back then. I'm 52 now. I want to show my wife around. She's Irish. I met her before I started working at the hall. We've been married 26 years. I'm not taking her to any town halls, but I am taking her to Machu Picchu.
I love living here.
I love where I live.
Boroondara is the best place to be.
The fists are washed with wine. Speak to me on summer strolls. Try to weather my hot